Frank Ragnow, center for the Detroit Lions, has hung up the cleats. He's calling
Lions
it. Ryan,
fans.
First of all, shock.
Yeah.
I was stunned, and I shouldn't have been. He announced on his Instagram page, this is what he said: the past couple of months have been very trying as I come to the realization that my football journey is ending and I'm officially retiring from the NFL. I've tried to convince myself that I'm feeling good, but I'm not, and it's time to prioritize my health and my family's future. I have given this team everything I have and thought I had more to give, but the reality is simply I don't. I have to listen to my body, and this has been one of the hardest decisions of my life. The Lions organization has been absolutely incredible throughout this entire process, and I can't emphasize this enough, how grateful I am for this team and all the fans. It was an absolute honor going to battle for you all. Before we discuss all of this, can we just go around the room? Initial reaction to hearing the news. For me, it was shock, although it shouldn't have been. Braylon?
Expected it. Just thinking back to the time last year that he, not this past season, the season where 2 years ago, all the injuries he dealt with that season, and then almost retiring before starting this past football season. We had to be honest with ourselves and knew that it was on the table potentially. So I think because of how that played out, the last offseason where we looked up Maz and he was talking about he almost retired. None of us knew about that. None of us heard about that. But I kept that in my membrane. So hearing the news, it was like, damn. But I wasn't surprised.
Maz?
First thing, of course, I'm skeptic. You know me.
Yeah.
I remember last year when he came out and he said, I'm not retiring. I'm playing. I feel this is the best I've ever felt in a long time. And then just a few days ago in May was only a couple days ago, he mentioned that he was not happy with his current contract. So when I heard he retired today, I said, man, I hope it's just a ploy. But I don't think it is. And I think the Lions had known about this, that it was coming, that it was a good possibility, that he was going to call it off. And they went out and drafted his replacement in Tate Ratledge. And I know that kid wasn't a full-time center with Georgia, but I believe he's cut from the same mold as Frank Ragnow. We're going to miss the hell out of this guy. But I don't think the Lions are surprised.
Pete?
Tell you what, I really I wasn't shocked because he's been battling injuries. He's getting up there, but I'm shocked of the position because he's the center, and there's no better relationship that a quarterback has than with his center. And it's so important to get the right guy in for the cadence thing now. That is huge. Cadence is everything when you're running the offense, especially the offense the Lions are going to be running. So Tate Ratledge. 2 words I said immediately when that happened was just Tate Ratledge.
Ricky?
Shocked but not surprised. Like, it was at first I was like, oh no, but I thought about like, yeah, they did mention that Tate played a little center. He was getting a little older, a lot of injuries. I was riding in the car, I got the announcement, and I'm just kind of like, this makes sense. I'm not really mad at it. We've already been working on the line, so shocked but not surprised was my reaction.
Matt, here's a quick one. Before we dive into what this means for the Lions and what side are you, do you feel like this lessens the chance and all that good stuff? Barry Sanders faxed in his retirement after 10 seasons with the Detroit Lions. Frank Ragnow, he posts on Instagram. What's the difference between the two realistically? Because a lot of people have Frank Ragnow's back. Meanwhile, people still hate Barry Sanders.
Barry did it on the eve of training camp at Saginaw Valley State. This guy is doing it on June 2nd. That's the major difference. And I'm pretty sure he told them, this is what I'm doing. Guys, I'm surprised that they didn't draft a full-fledged center. But knowing these guys, Brad Holmes said, that kid's a center. If you remember, when they took Frank Ragnow, I think he played 2 positions as well at Arkansas, and they made him into a center. And I believe that this Ratledge kid is the answer. And, of course, Graham Glasgow is there as well. It sucks. Yeah. It really does. I hope he changes his mind and plays 1 more year.
Well, I don't think he's going to change his mind. And, Braylon, just to answer your question first and foremost, if it was Lomas Brown instead of Barry Sanders, it probably wouldn't have had as much hate as it did at the time. If this is Jared Goff who's doing this instead of Frank Ragnow, it probably doesn't – you're probably not having a love fest like you are right now. At the same time, with Ragnow, just to back it up my morning a little bit, So on Thursday, Frank Ragnow is having his skeet shooting, his third annual skeet shooting event for his Rags Remembered Foundation. It's a charity event to support his foundation. I believe his foundation, if memory serves correct, serves children who lost a parent at a young age. I was in the process of doing my Fox 2 stuff there Thursday, and 30 minutes before this news broke, I was on the phone with Stick here at Woodward Sports. Hey, what are the odds of doing our show on Thursday from Frank Ragnow's event?
Hey.
I'm supposed to be there. I got a couple of scheduling things. Could we do our show from Frank's event in Lake Orion on Thursday? I think it'd be great. There could be a bunch of Lions there. It'd be a great event. Stick says, yeah, let me see if I can work a few things out, but we should be okay to do that. 30 minutes after I got off the phone with him,
Bam.
Frank Ragnow retires.
He heard
Okay, even better. Stick, now we got a broadcast
Right, now we got
from there, right? Get an email almost immediately thereafter.
Canceled.
The event is still happening, but
No media.
no media.
Yeah.
Of course, still invited to shoot and enjoy the event, but we ask that you refrain from bringing a crew, cameraman. I appreciate you understanding, and we'll reach out in the future.
He doesn't
with
want the
Frank and
distraction.
the foundation.
Yeah.
No, and like, I kind of don't understand. I mean, I get it, but I kind of don't, because everybody wants it, but it just goes to show you what kind of guy Frank is. He is just one of the guys. He's not going to have some big press conference. Everybody wants to interview him. He's just not going to do that. He's going to send in the Barry Sanders fax. The fax machine in 2025 is your Instagram page or your social media of your choosing, and that's how it's going to be. Look, Frank Ragnow is a warrior. If Frank Ragnow could play to the all-pro level that he has been able to play for his entire career, he would be on the field. And Braylon, you know this better than anybody. Frank Ragnow cannot play. He cannot play. He cannot put his body through what the body has to be put through in order to play an NFL season. The 17 games, everything that leads up to playing those 17 games, he just can't physically do it anymore. If there's anybody that could, it's him. And I think this just speaks to who he is.
Look, offensive line position, from the time that I was in high school to college to the NFL, they are the warriors of the warrior. Like, they will play through whatever pain they can. I've told you the story about Ryan Tucker, who was the left tackle or the right tackle for the Cleveland Browns when I played there. He played with two cracks in his neck, herniated disc, the whole 9 yards. So if they can, they will. But we've seen Frank Ragnow's body now befall him over the last 2-3 seasons. There's been something every single season. Hell, 2.5 years, they almost cut his toe off.
Yeah.
2.5 years ago.
He's got nerve damage in that.
100%. And this is something that was very real 2 years ago. Now you're talking about potentially going into this 3 years later. So respect for the legend. But I would be lying. I would be lying if I said, oh, it's just the next man up. Two things can be true in this situation. I believe thing one, I believe they're prepared for this. Like you said, Christian Mahogany, the pick of him last year, becomes even more important. I believe conversations were had with Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, as well as Hank Fraley when Tate Ratledge was in that room. Hey, look, can you play center? How are you at center? We want to rely more on you than center. We're thinking center more than guard. These are conversations that were had, and I'm pretty sure they got the answers out of him that they believed in. So they are prepared. That's one thing. But two things can be true, as you know, who says it's still going to be a serious issue for the Lions in the first half of the season. You talk about cadence, you talk about consistency and rhythm. The Lions offense has been able to be consistent over the past 4 years. The offensive line has pretty much been the same. Frank Ragnow is the beast and the catalyst. Penei Sewell is our best player, but Frank Ragnow is the captain. He's the leader. He's seeing the blitzes. As Pete told you, he's keeping the cadence. He's keeping the rhythm of the offensive line. He's keeping Jared Goff at bay. Now you take Frank Ragnow from Jared Goff. You take Ben Johnson from Jared Goff. All you Lions fans that anything you say, they're always going to be fine. You're right. The Lions will eventually adapt. They eventually will be fine. But the first half of the season, it's going to be an interesting one. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
Go back to that sheet real quick.
You got it, buddy. I was waiting for
You just said, Braylon Edwards, you just said, if you think it's next man up with Frank Ragnow,
It's not.
we got news to talk about. Look at these grades. Number 1 in run blocking, number 2 overall graded center last year.
Crazy.
In 2023, number 1 run blocking center in 2023, number 1 graded overall center in 2023. For the last 2 years specifically, when the Lions have won back-to-back division championships, made it all the way to an NFC championship game, and you know the history from there, they had the best center in the league. And I will go a step further, gentlemen. Name me, Penei Sewell notwithstanding, he's on the team. Name me a better offensive lineman since Lomas Brown was on this team back in 85 to 95. In the last 30 seasons, who is a better offensive lineman for the Detroit Lions than Frank Ragnow? I'm giving you 30 seasons. Those guys don't fall off trees.
They don't fall off trees too, Ryan Ermanni. Like 2 years ago when Frank was missing games because of the toe, he'd miss a game here, he would come back and play. Just dominant. You saw the difference when he was on the field. So for us to know how good Frank has been in his last 3 years, for us to talk about him, they were the catalyst. That offensive line is led by Frank. For us just to say, oh, okay, cool, we drafted Tate Ratledge, he's going to be the guy. Now, look, maybe eventually down the line, but I'm just telling you right now, that type of consistency that Jared Goff, number 16, has been used to for the last 4 going on 5 years starts at the center position, and it's a damn good one in Frank Ragnow. So losing him, it is going to be an interesting first half of the season just from the cadence, the offensive line standpoint. What does that leadership role look like now?
Hey, listen, guys. I thought I saw a stat. Over 5,000 snaps, or how many snaps? He's given up 5 sacks.
Wow.
5 sacks.
Wow.
Jesus.
So he's the gold standard of centers. And maybe Dominic Raiola, not as good as him, but solid. Rye, you asked. I'll give you Dom. Dom was pretty good offensive lineman, pretty good center. So since Dom passed the baton to him, now Frank is going to pass the baton to the next guy. And we don't know exactly who it is. They have been giving Tate Ratledge most of the OTAs, most of the first team snaps in these OTAs. So they knew this was going to happen, or at least it had a chance to happen. Earlier today, Kirby Joseph goes on his Instagram. Matter of fact, he answered a question from us here at Woodward Sports. Check it out.
What are your thoughts on Frank Kerr? Yes, sir. Woodward Sports trying to make this an article. I think Frank is an amazing human being, bro, and I feel like we should all be like Frank. That's what I think. So put that in your.
There you go, Kirby Joseph.
Frank Ragnow, definitely a leader, definitely the leader in that locker room, definitely a leader on the offensive line. That part will be missed, but let's just cover on the field. This changes the comfortability at which Jared Goff plays in the pocket. Eventually, it can get back to that. Maybe it's Glasgow, maybe it's Tate Ratledge. Eventually, it can get back to that. But just the comfortability, when you're Jared Goff, all you do is set hut. You don't have to worry about the right side. You don't have to worry about the middle. And because of Taylor Decker aging a little bit over the last year or so, you just glance to the left more so than that. Now you got to worry about up the middle. Mm-hmm. Now you got to worry about to the left as well. It's going to be interesting, man.
Hey, it frees up 13, almost 14 million.
Oh, Anson's fired up. Anson is fired up in the chat.
So I don't know what you do with that money.
Maz, you should be talking about that 14 million that's going to open up.
I was actually going to say that before he wrote it.
I know.
I'll give you. There you go, Anson. You got it. Let Anson cook.
On the other side too, this isn't uncharted territory. One of the best centers, arguably the greatest center in the modern era, the last 25 years is who? It's Jason Kelsey. He retired last year. His replacement, Cam Jurgens. Last time I checked, he's a Super Bowl winner. So it's not uncharted territory to get back to. We're just simply saying in the interim process, it's going to be an interesting one because now more pressure is going to be on Jared Goff. It was already more pressure going to be on him because of this being his offense. Now he has to worry about the offensive line and making sure that insert center here is correct before each play. It's gonna be a lot for Jared Goff in the beginning.
What are we worried about more now? Defensive line or offensive line?
Offensive line.
Well, it's a great question because we worry as fans, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're inherent.
Now what are we
worriers,
gonna do?
right? We're inherent worriers.
There's
and,
two answers to that.
And look, Braylon, I love you say this all the time, and I think this applies for this situation as well. Both things can be true. One, I think the Lions are going to be fine, but don't minimize the loss of Frank Ragnow.
Yes.
This is an enormous loss for the Detroit Lions.
And the running backs.
Because I always say,
What?
what is your calling card for the Detroit Lions? What has been the calling card for this franchise been for the last really 4 or 5 years? Offense and offensive line,
Offensive
really.
line.
They want to be good in the trenches.
Yeah.
When Dan Campbell came on, good in the trenches. When Brad Holmes came on, good in the trenches. And that's how they've drafted, and that's how they've attacked each lineup. And that's fantastic. This weakens them a little bit. But just because this weakens them doesn't mean they are weak. Does that make sense? Just because they are weaker than they were yesterday doesn't mean they are weak. It is still an absolute strength for this football team. It's just not as much of a strength.
It is, but I'm nervous. I think they will figure it out. I'm giving Dan Campbell that credit. I'm giving Brad Holmes that credit. I'm giving his team that credit, so relax. But you know what we didn't even think about when this happened, Maz? Who is no longer at right guard this season for the Detroit Lions? Although 1 year, Kevin Zeitler was phenomenal.
Yeah, I would love to have
year.
him back now.
He was top 3 right guard in the league last year, and when he was in the game, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs loved going off his side to that right side. So now you're missing Kevin Zeitler, and then right next to him you're missing Frank Ragnow. Like, I don't care how you slice it. These are 2 major losses considering what the ground game was last year. Last year, the ground game was automatic. We knew Dave Montgomery is in there. He's going to pound you for 90 yards. We know Jahmyr getting in there. Jahmyr find his way to 170 total offense. What does that look like without Zeitler as well as Frank Ragnow? Because Glasgow last year struggled a little bit when he replaced Kevin Zeitler at times. So this is a real concern for right now. But the good news is it's June 2nd.
It is June 2nd, and we could talk about who we think the interior of the offensive line is going to be. It's going to be all new, right? Zeitler not here. Ragnow not here.
Right.
Glasgow, maybe what position is he going to play? Is he going to play center?
He's on his last leg.
You know, is Glasgow going to be the center of this football team? And then Ratledge plays,
guard.
right guard or one of the guard positions. Is that a possibility? It is definitely intriguing to think about. And another thought that initially jumped off the page at me
2 years ago.
when I heard this news was, guys, this is why you have to take advantage of every single opportunity that you have, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You just have no idea. And it's a metaphor for life, too, not just football. You cannot worry about tomorrow. You have to take care of today. Do the best you can today. Accomplish what you can accomplish today. And 2 years ago, they blew it. They blew an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. They blew an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. And last year was last year, where they didn't even win a playoff game. Now, I'm not freaking out saying that I think they're not going to win the Super Bowl, because I do. I do believe they're going to go, compete, and play for and win a Super Bowl this year, because I just don't think there's a team in the NFL that I look around and say they're that much better than the Detroit Lions. So the goals are still the goals. My belief in this team is still my belief in this team. But the second thought I had on Ragnow, besides holy crap, wow, was, man, they blew it 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, that literally is where it should go. That for however you feel about that conversation, that's where it should go. When you're in those moments, you just never know if you're going to get back. And then each year, things happen. Last year, a ton of injuries. This year, Frank retires. Maz, I'm going to ask you, since you brought up Super Bowl, Ryan Ermanni, Frank Ragnow retiring. Now, where are your line? Like, where are you at with the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl
Yeah.
this year. Where are you at with that?
Well,
Has it changed with this?
Do
Obviously.
you think Vegas knew of this ahead of time because they marked them so low? They took a 15-win team and said 10.5. It's remarkable. So I do believe my 14 wins, my 13 wins that I originally thought, maybe we shave a game or two off of that. I do believe the healthiest team wins the Super Bowl because the top 5 teams are pretty much talented. They're very talented, the top 5 teams. Lions probably have a lot more talent on offense. Other teams might have more on defense. I do believe the Lions will still contend for a Super Bowl. But, man, I wish the draft was coming up next week instead of it was a month ago because I think they would have drafted differently.
That was one of my questions about the Barry Sanders deal, and people saying, well, it's still a lot of time. Like, yeah, he still waits till after the draft, and maybe that's why they drafted Tate Rowledge in the second round. But if you're going to retire, it should have been already. Where are you at with the Super Bowl deal? Because I'll give you mine after.
The Super Bowl in
terms of where the Lions are, where are you with the comfortability?
I think they're
based on
still.
this?
I think if you put teams in tiers,
Yeah.
they're in that top tier.
Okay.
Like, forget about ranking first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Forget about all that. If you just go tier 1, these teams will absolutely be able to compete for a Super Bowl. They are in that tier. Now, there might be 4 or 5 teams, 5 teams in that tier. Maybe you go Philadelphia, Detroit, Buffalo, Baltimore, and who else? Kansas City? Are they in that tier this year? I don't know.
I still put them in there only because of their quarterback.
So there's 5 teams. Yeah. They're in tier 1. Tier 2, who's in that one? I mean, maybe that's
Ravens.
an exercise that we can do later in the week. But that before Frank Ragnow retired, they were tier 1. After Frank Ragnow retires, they're in tier 1.
I agree.
Now, just second point, if I could, Braylon.
Yeah, please.
I think they absolutely. This is one of the differences in the organizations between now and Barry Sanders when he did it. I think it totally took the Detroit Lions off guard when Barry Sanders retired.
No doubt.
Completely out of left field, wasn't even a thought.
Yeah.
I think this was a thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Because I think they knew every single step of the way. If you put his statement back up,
Sure.
there's a line in there that I don't think he says
The Lions,
unless
talking
the
about the
Lions
Lions.
ultimately gave them and him the time and the respect. At the bottom here, the Lions organization has been absolutely incredible throughout this process. What's that tell you?
That
This
means
has been a
they're talking about
process.
it.
There's been an open dialogue. Both sides have been sharing, hey, we got to do this. Where's your time on this? And ultimately, I think the player waited as long as he could up until training camp or up until he felt and we're months away from training camp. Well, I guess a month away, 2 months away, the middle of July, month and a half away from training camp. They start earlier because of the Hall of Fame game. I think ultimately it was, I want to wait to see how my body reacts as we get close to camp, and it just wasn't healthy enough to go.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. You know, this is definitely a team that they want to work with you. They want to talk, and they have the conversations. Look, as long as you're open with us, we'll be open with you. My issue with the beginning of the season for this Lions team, now with no Frank Ragnow and remembering that Kevin Zeitler is no longer that right guard, it's just this, look at how you start the season. I'm scared the Lions get in the hole early, and now the last second half of the season, or the last 9 games of the season, or the last 10, they're in dogfights because of the position of the first one. Green Bay Packers is who they open against. The Detroit line, I mean, the line of the Bears, that defensive line for the Bears. Ravens, the third game, the defensive line for the Ravens. The Browns, Myles Garrett on that defensive line. Then the Bengals, Trey Hendrickson. These are just the defensive lines that this offensive line will have to go against. Then the Chiefs and Chris Jones, and don't sleep on the Bucs, whose defensive line is one of the best in the business. This is why we always lost to them 2 years ago in the playoff. So for me, I'm nervous about the start of the season. That is a lot of mean defensive lines that you are going to have to go up against that they smell blood in the water. When you know you got to go against a Frank Ragnow or Jason Kelsey, it's a little bit different week. When you got a Kevin Zeitler, when you got Penei Sewell, healthy Taylor Decker, it's a different energy. When you smell a little blood in the water, we got a rookie, or we have a guy that's not nearly as good as Frank Ragnow, or that big guy at right guard, he's no Kevin Zeitler. These defensive lines are going to smell blood in the water. I don't want the Lions to now get off to a 2-4 start.
It's a good call.
No doubt. Guys, more on this. We could read some of your chats as well. But big news today, Lions center Frank Ragnow saying he is retiring from the NFL at 29 years old. And we are seeing more and more people retire at a young age. Braylon, I want you to speak to this because why are we? Is this the money? Is this the amount of pressure that is put on these guys at such a young age where they play so much football? Why are we seeing these guys retire before the age of 30 who are playing at the highest level? We'll get to that and so much more. But first,